10. Why should we place Christ at the top and summit of the human race? Was he kinder, more forgiving, more self-sacrificing than Buddha? Was he wiser? Did he meet death with more perfect calmness than Socrates? Was he more patient, more charitable than Epictetus? Was he a greater philosopher, a deeper thinker than Epicurus? In what respect was he superior to Zoroaster? Was he gentler than Lao Tse? More universal than Confucius? Were his ideas of human rights and duties superior to those of Zeno? Did he express grander truths than Cicero? Was his mind subtler than Spinoza's? Was his brain equal to Kepler's or Newton's? Was he grander in death, a sublimer martyr than Bruno? Was he in intelligence, in the force and beauty of expression, in breadth and scope and thought, in wealth of illustration, in aptness of comparison, in knowledge of the human brain and heart, of all passions, hopes and fears, the equal of Shakespeare, the greatest of the human race? If Christ was in fact God, he knew all the future. Before him, like a panorama, moved the history yet to be. He knew how his words would be interpreted. He knew what crimes, what horrors, what infamies would be committed in his name. He knew that the hungry flames of persecution would climb around the limbs of countless martyrs. He knew that thousands and thousands of brave men and women would languish in dungeons in darkness, filled with pain. He knew that his church would invent and use instruments of torture, that his followers would appeal to whip and faggot, to chain and rack. He saw the horizon of the future lurid with the flames of the auto da fe. He knew what creeds would spring like poisonous fungi from every text. He knew the ignorant sects waging wars against each other. He saw thousands of men under the orders of priests building prisons for their fellow men. He saw thousands of scaffolds dripping with the best and bravest blood. He saw his followers using the instruments of pain. He heard the groans, saw the faces white in agony. He heard the shrieks, the sobs and cries of all the moaning, martyred multitudes. He knew that commentaries would be written on his words with swords, to be read by the lights of faggots. He knew that the Inquisition would be born of the teachings attributed to him. He saw the interpolations and falsehoods that hypocrisy would write and tell. He saw all wars that would be waged, and he knew that above these fields of death, these dungeons, these rackings, these burnings, these executions, for 1,000 years would float the dripping banner of the cross. He knew that hypocrisy would be robed and crowned, that cruelty and credulity would rule the world, knew that liberty would perish from the earth, knew that popes and kings in his name would enslave the souls and bodies of men, knew that they would persecute and destroy the discoverers, thinkers, and inventors, knew that his church would extinguish reason's holy light and leave the world without a star. He saw his disciples extinguishing the eyes of men, flaying them alive, cutting out their tongues, searching for all the nerves of pain. He knew that in his name his followers would trade in human flesh, that cradles would be robbed and women's breasts unbabed for gold. And yet he died with voiceless lips. Why did he fail to speak? Why did he not tell his disciples, and through them the world, "You shall not burn, imprison, and torture in my name. You shall not persecute your fellow men"? Why did he not plainly say, "I am the Son of God," or "I am God"? Why did he not explain the Trinity? Why did he not tell the mode of baptism that was pleasing to him? Why did he not write a creed? Why did he not break the chains of slaves? Why did he not say that the Old Testament was or was not the inspired word of God? Why did he not write the New Testament himself? Why did he leave his words to ignorance, hypocrisy, and chance? Why did he not say something positive, definite, and satisfactory about another world? Why did he not turn the tear-stained hope of heaven into the glad knowledge of another life? Why did he not tell us something about the rights of man, of the liberty of hand and brain? Why did he go dumbly to his death, leaving the world to misery and to doubt? I will tell you why. He was a man and did not know. Inspiration. Not before about the 3rd century was it claimed or believed that the books composing the New Testament were inspired. It will be remembered that there were a great number of books of Gospels, Epistles, and Acts, and that from these the inspired ones were selected by uninspired men. Between the fathers there were great differences of opinion as to which books were inspired, much discussion, and plenty of hatred. Many of the books now deemed spurious were by many of the fathers regarded as divine, and some now regarded as inspired were believed to be spurious. Many of the early Christian and some of the fathers repudiate the Gospel of John, the Epistle to the Hebrews, Jude, James, Peter, and the Revelation of St. John. On the other hand, many of them regarded the Gospel of the Hebrews, of the Egyptians, the preaching of Peter, the shepherd of Hermas, the Epistle of Barnabas, the pastor of Hermas, the Revelation of Peter, the Revelation of Paul, the Epistle of Clement, the Gospel of Nicodemus, inspired books, equal to the very best. From all these books and many others, the Christians selected the inspired ones. The men who did the selecting were ignorant and superstitious. They were firm believers in the miraculous. They thought that diseases had been cured by the aprons and handkerchiefs of the apostles, by the bones of the dead. They believed in the fable of the phoenix, and that the hyenas changed their sex every year. Were the men who through many centuries made the selections inspired? Were they, ignorant, credulous, stupid, and malicious, as well qualified to judge of inspiration as the students of our time? How are we bound by their opinion? Have we not the right to judge for ourselves? Erasmus, one of the leaders of the Reformation, declared that the epistle to the Hebrews was not written by Paul, and he denied the inspiration of 2nd and 3rd John and also of Revelation. Luther was of the same opinion. He declared James to be an epistle of straw and denied the inspiration of Revelation. Zwingli rejected the book of Revelation, and even Calvin denied that Paul was the author of Hebrews. The truth is that the Protestants did not agree as to what books are inspired until 1647 by the Assembly of Westminster. To prove that a book is inspired, you must prove the existence of God. You must also prove that this God thinks, acts, has objects, ends, and aims. This is somewhat difficult. It is impossible to conceive of an infinite being. Having no conception of an infinite being, it is impossible to tell whether all the facts we know tend to prove or disprove the existence of such a being. God is a guess. If the existence of God is admitted, how are we to prove that he inspired the writers of the books of the Bibles? How can one man establish the inspiration of another? How can an inspired man prove that he is inspired? How can he know himself that he is inspired? There is no way to prove the fact of inspiration. The only evidence is the word of some man who could, by no possibility, know anything on the subject.